How's it going, everybody? We are back, finally. I took a week off, had to chill out a little bit. And it was my birthday last week, and I needed a minute. But got a solid show planned for today. Obviously, if you have not yet, please subscribe to our channel. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, support us on Patreon. You can catch the link to Patreon. I'm looking at the wrong side, right over there, right up top, as well as our Twitter. So that's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna try and get a little bit looser on this show. I'm gonna do my best to not restrain myself as much, because I feel like it's I don't know how much it's helping. And you know, honestly, I think people probably would rather just get this straight. I mean, I'll keep balanced, obviously, but I'm not gonna yeah, I'm gonna probably hold back a little less of my takes. So at any rate, today, let's see, we have there's obviously, we're gonna go over the town dispatch like we do every week. It's just kind of something that I like to cover now. I think I don't know. It just, there's good information, and there's just stuff that like is relevant to folks in there every week. And I think, Ali Cruz is doing a really good job putting that together. So I don't, I want to sort of give it its moment to shine every week. Let's see here. We have an article from the Ledger-Transcript about changes in policing during this whole pandemic situation, which are, I don't know, it's relevant. It's relevant to everybody. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to go over specifically some clips from the select board meeting where they were talking about broadband, specifically some stuff that Bill Taylor was talking about on his, doing broadband stuff, doing broadband work to get service out to more remote areas of town. It's really been it's been tough for a lot of people who don't have internet at a time like this when we really need everybody needs to have that access, and this is it's an issue that, as we'll hear about, has been championed for a while in this area, particularly from Senator Gene Deitch. Sorry about that. I probably ate breakfast a little too close to the stream, and I'm sorry about that. At any rate, moving on from the broadband stuff, we'll have those clips over that. This is sort of the more like getting into the salt side of things. But I had a personal interaction with a journalist from the Manchester Ink Link the other day, and I just kind of wanted to talk about the interaction, not because I think I'm totally right or some sort of like, I don't know. I think I want to talk about it because it's just it's a journalism thing that I have witnessed happen, and I've witnessed people complain about it. And it was it's just a sort of a dynamic between the public and journalists that I wanted to talk about a little bit, because it's, and I don't want to shame anybody, but I also, it's like I want to talk about the lines of where we can actually have acceptable critique and try and not take it personally. And then from there, the real joy, the real pleasure piece that I got today was, and I'll get into it later, but there's been a conservative video podcast that's kicked up lately, called Live Free and Rant. And one of the co-hosts is Peterborough's very own Christopher Maidment. And about 2 weeks ago, there was a just wildly interesting conversation on their show. And people are pretty well aware that I do left content here more so. Like I personally lean left, and that's the type of stuff that you're going to end up hearing more so. That type of labor, humanitarian activism perspective is the type of stuff that I want to try and get out to folks here. But this is like, I still have to sort of like monitor and take a look at things from the other side, just like we all do. I think that's super, super important. And this is like, the clips that I've got today are really, they're really interesting in terms of just like similarities and differences. I'll get to it. First and foremost, we'll get into things that are nice for folks, things that are going to make people less miserable. So, obviously, we're going to just sort of dive into the just a quick assessment of the Weekly Dispatch. Obviously, if you want to change your party affiliation, you've got until Tuesday, June 2nd to do so. For anybody who's really, who didn't get a chance to switch out after our last voting session, or, didn't get a chance to return to independent, if that's something you're trying to do, this is your deadline. So just something to keep in mind. There are links. Let's see here. We'll get a little bit more content up here. Yeah, so they do have links right here. Let's see. Spring tax bills are scheduled to be mailed out this week with payment due on July 1st. So yikes, and we'll see how that goes. I am a renter personally, so I can't I don't have the perspective necessary to really fully and meaningfully weigh in on this. And I would love for someone in the community who is an owner who might be willing to come on and talk about getting through this from that perspective. I think, we hear a lot right now about rent strikes and landlords, and I absolutely think that's important. I am curious to hear about that perspective more from the homeowner, especially because that's something that we just kind of have more of in this area. It's really, it's a big part of it, and I think that matters, and it's something we got to talk about it. So at any rate, let's see here. The Community and Economic Development section, EDA, is now looking for folks for their Our Town Together campaign, where they are going to share people that make a difference in the community. So if you have somebody that that makes a difference, you want to reach out to them, send your nomination to Karen Hatcher at peterborough.nh.gov, and they can get that in the loop. It's if you know somebody that's just making a huge difference in the community, that's a really nominate them, get them out there, help them out, because the solidarity is going to be really good. And the more people that can get drawn into that, the better. I know it's, it can be weird to look at those things and wonder if it's, curated in any fashion by people who are doing it. But I think this is really cool that they're really trying to open it up to the public and get recommendations that way. So that's a really, really good move. Let's see. Library Home Companion came back for episode 2, so you can go check that out on their Facebook. I personally have just been a little swamped, and I haven't had a chance to catch up on it yet. So that's sort of on my list of things to do for today. But we've, the cast of characters for it this time is really great. 2 good friends of mine, Adam Arnone and Zach Green, both participated this time, so definitely worth checking out. Both very talented individuals, as well as the other people who were in this episode that I don't personally know, who, without having observed it yet, I would imagine are probably also quite talented. So definitely go check that out. Let's see. And then finally on that, on the Weekly Dispatch, just to catch that up, you'd still go get your burn permit. So now is definitely the time. It's been getting a lot warmer this week. We're looking at it finally being up into the 70s regularly every day. I mean, I even saw 80 ticking up this weekend, so it could get hot. But it's good. It's really good. And it's cool that people are going to be able to get out and get fires more. I'm stoked because I like the smell of campfires, so the more that odor is around in the area, the happier I am. Cool. So with that, I just wanted to sort of move back a little bit to the bridge pictures, just to show them off. And Steve Lipovsky did a good job with these photos, these aerial photos and stuff like that. It's really nice. So here's the web page, and let's see here. Yep, it's just peterboroughbridgenh.com/photo gallery. I'll have a link in the description afterwards if you want to go check this out independently. But this is bridge pre-work. So while it was still open, and then things are starting to get underway, so you can see the work being done right here. So it's pretty intense. Hopefully, something else I want to do is I want to try and get down there and get some footage of it at some point too. These photos are awesome. It would be really cool to have some moving, working stuff as well. So I'm gonna be pulling that together as I can. Nice panoramic shots of the whole thing, and this is, it's pretty wild. This is a big project. It's a really big project, but they're getting moving on it, and that's awesome. So So good on the town of Peterborough, and good on Steve Lipovsky for getting these photos. Thank you guys so much. And, just really just looking forward to seeing how this project develops. We'll keep in touch, and if I can learn more about sort of what exactly they're doing, maybe we can have somebody on to explain to us more about what's going on in the images that we're looking at. I can't do it today because I just don't know, but we'll get there. Right. So, the next thing that I wanted to get to was, we've got an article in the Ledger-Transcript from Megan Pierce, who's now with Granite State News Collaborative. Great organization, by the way. Great organization. Totally support what they do. It's just, yeah, awesome. So this piece is for the Ledger-Transcript, specifically talking about our region here. And it's and I'll have a link for this in the description as well. But this article is mostly talking about how police are reducing contact and not pulling people over as much. So anybody who's been out driving, you're likely to have noticed that there's definitely a lot more. It feels like there's more cops out on the road, which is great because in a sense, because it's, there's still this semblance of like society happening over it. But what's interesting is that they are, calls in general are down, and and they're saying here, basically, we're being more selective on our motor vehicle enforcement. Hancock Police Chief Andrew Wood is saying that he's told officers to use social distancing and masks just like anybody else would. Same practice. Obviously for anybody that knows, any town meetings, all that kind of stuff, that's all happening online now. It's all happening in Zoom meetings, and that's so definitely from that perspective, which is less so the law enforcement, more like law generating. That's all been well contained, but like here, right? For example, we don't want to have a huge amount of contact with a lot of people. Unfortunately, it's what we do. But chasing broken taillights is not something we're prioritizing right now. So and he absolutely goes on to say that he did just arrest a guy for a DUI. So don't think that they won't don't think that like we're all of a sudden in a lawless world and it's just this weird token. It's totally, they're totally still doing their jobs. But this is a step in the positive direction here. It's a really, really positive step. It's always good at any time that you can to reduce any kind of like police intervention like that, at least in my opinion. I'm totally all for police demilitarization in any capacity. So when I see local police chiefs talking about like really just approaching it from a people perspective, makes me feel a lot better about the police that we do have. I'm also very dubious of police because I've had my own experiences that were not great, and I've watched other people have experiences that were really not great. So that said, it's nice to know that we're sort of like there's trust here. Actually, it takes a certain degree of trust between of the police trusting their own community to manage themselves and handle themselves as best they can. So this is a good piece, and they're saying they when they do need to pull a motorist over, they wear a mask, they use gloves, carry hand sanitizer, all that. it's we're seeing drops in arrests. Here's something to note is that Chief Gennard said he saw a drop in domestic violence calls, but now there's an uptick. The quote is, initially those numbers were down early on. That is beginning to change, so that is concerning to us. As time has gone on from the beginning of this thing, we are starting to see changes in some people's behavior. We are starting to see a lot of stress and frustration in people that has had an effect on people's behavior overall. Now, this is a really, really important point to bring up, okay? Maybe out on the road, it's a little easier. Mental health is a huge, 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 huge problem right now, like crazy huge. And most people are not dealing with it. That's just the reality. And I think anybody who spends any significant amount of time on Facebook knows this. You don't need to know what's going on in other people's homes to know that the likelihood that domestic violence has gone up is probably true. And the quarantine doesn't help with that, not just in terms of locking you in, but also restricting your mental capacity to like relieve yourself or in any of your frustrations. That's probably going to create a lot of conflict in homes where there's already conflict. So this is, this is a time where if you know somebody who struggles at all with anything, like ever, which is pretty much everyone, reach out to them and also, how do I want to put this? I don't know, use it as an opportunity to reflect on your own struggles, I guess. I think we're all gonna one of the biggest things that we're all gonna have to confront with this, right, is our tolerance of each other, and our acceptance of other people having a different way than us. Normally in society, we're able to go out, we're able to do things, we're able to, we can separate ourselves when you need to. There's more options, right? If you don't have those options, we're all of a sudden being jammed into a mental situation that like we were never ever equipped to deal with. Some of us better than others. I think introverted people probably struggling significantly less over this. But I can't tell you how many people I've heard say to me, there are just people that I never would have expected to lose it over something, and they're just off the rails over this COVID stuff. So support your neighbors and support your friends and your family. This is the time to do it. This is the time to ask the hard question, and this is the time to find acceptance in other people's differences, no matter how mad they're making us, and to know when you just need to look away and do something else. I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that can be taught here, is like at what, we all have our own problems, but at what point does it become us making things worse for ourselves? And I know it's really difficult to just ask that everybody just be more self-aware. Like, that's not really something that you can just demand of folks. But in all seriousness, it's probably going to be an increased level of self-awareness and self-contextualization separated from emotion is probably going to help us reconcile some of those differences or see those shades of gray a little better. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch on that for a second, because I think that's a big deal, and it's a big problem. So, I don't want to dwell on this too much more. I just don't, because it's kind of morbid. and just drag. Let's get that out of here. So, okay. What I want to go to, we'll do some video here. Okay. So I want to just play. Sorry about that. I want to play these clips from the select board meeting that just recently happened. Not sure if I have a date on hand. When was that? Just a few days ago. Wow, I really should have been prepared for this one. That's yikes. No, it's not a big deal. We'll get this up here. So yeah. All right, yeah. So this was on the 19th. So this was 2 days ago. So this is very recent stuff. Bill Taylor is here talking about a whole bunch of developments related to broadband access in Peterborough. And I'm just gonna let this roll for a second, just so that we can have a look at it, and yeah, and then we'll move from there.
Yeah, Nancy Plant. Yeah, so obviously everybody knows that there's some spots in town that have miserable internet. I'm in one of those spots, so trust me, I understand. What a couple months ago, I don't even remember when it was, probably February, somewhere before everything went crazy. We had a meeting with Senator Maggie Hassens. Is she senator or congresswoman?
Senator.
We had a meeting with her and some other, Gene Deitch was there, some of Maggie's staff, there was a bunch of people, a few community leaders. So what came out of that meeting was I met with the president of Y Valley and the, director of government affairs for Consolidated Communications. And we discussed and initially had some really positive feedback, or some pretty good vibes coming out of putting together Peterborough, Consolidated, and Y Valley to try to address the needs in a cheaper and faster form than other than going through the whole entire bond process. And we're not completely figured out if we can avoid the bond process, but we might. So anyways, we decided, and so far so good, but it got slowed down pretty quick, that between those two companies and myself, we're working on a program to get everybody wired in the outskirts. There is a website. It is UNIFI, I think, unify.net, that has options for broadband that I believe run off of your cell signal, and they can boost it inside your home. So for the people that are really struggling right now with it, that's an option. And I've heard some pretty good feedback from somebody out towards Ashley Drive that was working real well for them. So I would encourage anybody that's struggling right this minute to look into that. And Gene Deitch had reached out to us and said that there is some federal funding coming down the line. And if that federal funding matched exactly with what it would cost the town to get us wired, and therefore getting us out of the, getting us to avoid the entire bond process, that'd be pretty fabulous. So she's working on that. We have a couple more steps to take on the town's end to put out an RFP, that's request for proposals from any broadband providers to, basically give us a proposal on what they could do, what it would cost. And so there's a lot of things going on with it. There's no perfect answer right now. It's like everything, it's going to take some more time, but it's at least encouraging what we've been hearing so far.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, it's all this stuff is great, right? It's awesome. It's awesome that we're taking measures to do this stuff. It's awesome that that Bill is stepping out here, and I totally respect his desire to remain positive. There's also the reality that, like, look, Senator Gene Deitch has been working on this for I do not know how long. I mean, and it's like I've ran into her a few times. I've had a couple conversations with her. I mean, I know her pretty well, and I mean, this is something that she's been working on forever, man. I mean, not forever, but like this dates back years. When I first moved back up here after living in the city for a while, the conversation was happening then, about trying to get better broadband up here. I mean, almost 10 years ago. So there's a certain, like, well, this moves slower than molasses. And I feel like you can kind of see Bill's frustration here. You can see his frustration that he wants it to be that easy. He just wants to put it together and make it happen and just go. And unfortunately, that's just not how this is going to work at all. So, and I think with that, it's probably just, I might as well just get over to the next clip on it, because realistically, like, there's more to be had in here. And I think this second clip from it really is going to get to the meat of what I'm trying to point out here. So we'll go with that.
Some parts of town just have horrible internet, and that's, all there is to it. I know that there's another technology that Consolidated has been working on, which can boost DSL signal on existing copper phone lines. For anybody that doesn't know, all the phone lines that go to your house are made of copper. So that's what I mean when I say that. So that may turn into some sort of a pilot program in town here to, I don't think it's a totally solid technology yet, and they're kind of working out the kinks, but if, we can pick a couple of parts of town with them, and this is preliminary too, obviously, but if we could pick a couple of parts of town to let them do a pilot program, and if it works, awesome. It's not going to be any worse than it is right now, because how could it be for most of them?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that update.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you for jumping on that. I know Senator Deitch has been working on that for years, long before she became a senator, even when she was with the EDA in Peterborough. And it's a slow moving machine up at the state. And I know she's been advocating for us here and everybody in the area that in the rural areas that do not have access to internet. And we're all seeing how difficult that is for people now. So
there's some other things that
it's also just, it's not just the state, right? Like, it's important to remember, like Tyler's right, it is definitely, like, that matters, but it's also like, these providers are like it's a profit motive. Like, I just, for anybody that like might have it twisted, let's remember their first order interest, like Consolidated and all that, their first order interest is not necessarily to make sure that everybody has service. It's to make sure that they're making money. And yeah, there's definitely money to be made in bringing service to people that don't have it. You always want a new customer, but the other thing to consider is that if they can't find a way to like make that profitable for themselves, or if they can't see a way to do it, then they can sit here and they can say we want to do this all day, but they won't actually do anything. So, well, you know, it's just something to point out.
You know, so with Y Valley and Consolidated, the initial conversation and a couple since then were, you know, like I said before, we're pretty encouraging. And I just came right out to them and said, hey, look, is there not enough, you know, workaround for everybody? What about if we all work together to try and get this figured out? And they, you know, like they all kind of just looked around for a second. They're like, yeah, that we can do that. So
right, and
that was something that hadn't happened before.
Yeah.
Getting people to.
I don't know. I look, I don't know about that, man. That's really general. Can we help everybody? Can you guys work together and help everybody? Yeah, we can do that. Okay, that sounds like the most simple boilerplate, like off a script situation ever. Like I personally, like, I love Bill and I appreciate that he's trying to do this, but I have no idea what that accomplished. I have no idea what him saying, can we all just work together, actually accomplished. Because like they're like, yeah, we can. Skip over to, but if it's not profitable for us, we won't. If we don't have a way to make money off of it, if we don't have a way to recoup our costs quickly, especially in the middle of a pandemic, then we're not going to do it. Like, that's the unspoken part. And I don't want, like, you know, I really love Bill's like tenacity to go after this stuff, but I'm looking at this skeptically right now. I'm looking at that, like that conversation, what he just pointed out, I'm looking at it so skeptically because dude, if anything is proven to us just how hard it is to get any kind of service up here, they already talked about it. So I don't, you know, like, I know Bill wants to be the mover and the shaker of it, and that moment that he's describing might have made him feel like he really made a difference there. And I hope he did, but frankly, I am dubious that it actually, like, that what the exchange he just described meant anything at all. So anyways,
Elaborate, and I'd like to see it work out with them. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Then we'll just move on to the next, and then the next, and then the next.
And I'm glad that he understands what I'm talking about right here in his follow-up there.
We're definitely on top of it as best we possibly can be.
Great. And the certainly the fact that the kids are, you know, everybody's schooling from home and working from home right now, the pressure is on all over the country for rural broadband and to get this service to every home. And so it'd be wonderful if there was federal money and it got channeled down.
Right. And also, people don't forget that the providers, everybody's busy, you know, all those companies I'm sure are pretty busy fielding calls, but it's not the worst thing you could do to call them and let them know that you're concerned and you need better internet.
Hell
because
yeah.
We can do we can do everything we possibly can on the town's level, but they need to feel community pressure too as well, you know, and I think.
Hell yeah, dude. That's right. That's right. Awesome. Okay, sorry, I'm like, I get excited about it, but like, you know, damn straight, dude. That's where it's at.
That would help.
Yeah, that's.
I would never just come out and say, everybody right now this second pick up your phone and call and complain to every internet provider. But you know, if you're not doing anything after lunch tomorrow or something, maybe give them a shout.
Yeah.
But you didn't say that here.
No, I didn't. I would never say that in a public meeting. And you know, if it doesn't work out with the people at Consolidated and Y Valley, I'll just, at the next meeting, I'll give out their cell phone numbers and email addresses.
Oh yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Right. So like, look, this is it, man. This is like, I personally love the fact that, like, this is the selectman that I would personally expect to be the least activist driven, and yet he's out here calling for everybody to just like rip on internet providers. Like, this is great. This is totally cool. I'm happy with the leadership in the town over this one. All right. I recognize that it's like a total moonshot for us to actually improve our internet service here. But the fact that you've got the leaders of your town calling on the people of the town to hit up the corporate interests and be like, no, you need to help us, that's baller. Okay? That's awesome. And, you know, like, whatever I was saying about the last bit is like, this is the part that matters, man. Like, I do appreciate the intent here. I really appreciate the intent here. And I think that's just like, it's really got to be noted and applauded. And it's, you know, like I'm happy to see everybody laughing about this one. So, that was like a really great, this is a great moment. I just just saw that and I was like, gotta share it. There's like a theme in this week's stream, I guess, of like conservative folks saying things that are more like left leaning, or things where we're kind of connecting back on the other side. So this week's going to be a trippy stream. And as we can already tell. And with that, actually, I am noticing that I'm having some lost frame problems. I'm going to see if I can fix my stream health really quick. So, folks, I'm just going to bop out for like a moment. I'm sorry to put it on hold. We'll just take a sec to reacclimate. Hopefully I can get stream health better so people can enjoy it. The other thing I did want to say just before I pop to break is that starting this week, I'll be clipping the shows. We're recording them ahead of time so that it's like, you know, the quality will be better, but we'll actually get shorter segments. So folks who don't want to have to go digging through these big long streams for the content, it'll just be there for you. So, all right, with that, I'm going to just sort of pause it out really quick and I'll be back in a minute. Thanks, guys. Okay, folks, we're back. Sorry about that. Please excuse the little interruption. Fortunately, I was at a breaking point, which is good. Glad about that. And since I was at a breaking point, the next thing that we've got on the docket today is, yeah, so, okay. We're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about an experience that I had this past week. Not great. I was less than pleased about it, but I think it's something that, I mean, and I literally have had this conversation with other journalists, okay? So I like other journalists have identified this as being a problem in this state. Not to mention I hear about it from activists all the time. So what I'm going to do here is you know, scrolling through New Hampshire politics Twitter the other day, and I noticed that there was let's see. So, okay. I'm going to pop this up. I'll pull up the article as well, but this is what I had seen. This is the tweet that I caught. And it's just, their door is ready for the return of restaurant dining. Okay. My initial thing, like, maybe it's a knee jerk. Maybe I'm overreacting. I don't know if that's 6 feet. Like, angle? I don't know. It just doesn't seem like, and if it is, it's like barely 6 feet. It's like right on 6 feet. But that's eyeballing it. And I don't know. It looks like it's maybe 4 feet. Can't tell. So I had replied to this, they had another photo up, again, 6 feet. What I'm thinking here when I'm looking at these photos, and let me pull up the actual articles and get off Twitter for a second, okay? Because I know people really hate Twitter for good reason, but a lot happens there. So here's the original article, and there's a lot of applause here. And the thing about it is that, like, when I look at this article, right, to me, it would seem that this journalist walked up, asked the owners about what was going on, what they were doing. The owners told them. The journalist wrote it down, and then they left, and they went and they wrote an article because they like it. And let's be honest, Red Arrow is like a huge part of New Hampshire, not just in Manchester, but everywhere. It's like a really well-known state establishment, so I understand why people are like eager to get it back, just like anybody would be eager to get any of their services back. I'm not smashing on that, but okay, it is also the job of a journalist at a time where there's a pandemic that's killing people, and like we literally just had the highest new reported quantity of cases in like the last couple days in this country. Okay, so the idea that like things are good is ridiculous, right? Like removing some restrictions is not the same thing as saying the pandemic is over. And for journalists to not bear that in mind, right? Like, and to really like I have talked to a bunch of journalists who are like, I really just like writing pieces that make people feel good. You know what? Cool. That's also not actually the job. Sorry. Like, it's not. The real job of the journalist is to make sure that we all know what's going on. Like, contextually, okay? Sometimes, yes, it's about bolstering up really important parts of our community, but that's always got to be weighed within the context of everything else that's happening, right? Like, you can't just say fluffy stuff for the sake of saying fluffy stuff all the time, right? Like, I want just as much as anyone to have my restaurants back, right? Like, I care about that. That matters to me. But I also want them back for the long term. And anybody that's looked at a chart of how the flu pandemic happened, the second bump on that chart is like 3-4 times as tall as the first one, and we're still on the first one. So for anybody who's like just gonna be foolhardy about it, it's ridiculous. Now, my point to this was like, hey, someone could read this article, think this is a good idea, but we as the reader have to rely on the journalists to verify. Like we sort of count on that in a sense, right? Or we count on ourselves to vet this, which is basically what happened, right? So I had brought up like, hey, this doesn't look quite far enough. I don't know why we're not questioning that. I don't know why this isn't something that's being grilled. And this was the response I got. Sorry. Like, appears A journalist needs to fact check stuff, right? And when I brought up this criticism, right? Like, you know, to the extent that, like, let's see if I can pull up what I said, this is the fact of the matter. If you're going to report on a successful reopening where distance guidelines are a key component, maybe you should bring a tape measure. And I didn't, her follow-up to that was like, I didn't have a problem with it, like, because she admits she's going to bring it next time. I'm like, I'm happy she said that, right? But then the conversation changes. The conversation changes when she says, I'm just the messenger. And this is the problem that I take with journalism generally, but something that I have a serious problem with here in this state, and is this, like, this concept of impartiality, right? When she says, I was just driving by and it caught my eye, yeah, that's because she has a subjective experience. That stuck out to her. Okay? That's not even remotely unbiased. Selection is bias. Okay? Every time a journalist goes to write a story, whether they try as hard as they can or not to remain impartial when presenting all sides of the situation, the act of examining the situation itself is a form of bias. Okay? That's just it. All right? We got to deal with this, right? Everybody's got to confront the fact that every single thing you ever consume is presented through a layer of bias. It's like, I think, like, this was the stuff that like Nietzsche was talking about this, right? Like, objectivity is a false thing. I'm sort of over it. I'm sort of over this concept of objectivity. And, and at that point, she just kind of turns into, like, telling me, well, you sound like a great candidate for our VIP membership service, right? Like, you know what? Sorry. I like supporting local journalism, but I am not going to pay somebody to make their work better. Like that. That's her job. Okay? Like, it's her job to go out and vet everything. And after a certain point, it's like, I'm saying, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't know why you're turning this into, like, a marketing opportunity right now. Like, we're trying to talk about how there's a potential risk of you recommending a restaurant that might not meet guidelines because you didn't confirm it. And then your article is going to inspire folks to go to this restaurant where there could potentially be an outbreak. And you know what? At that point, I would say it's almost more on the journalist for that outbreak than it is for the restaurant. And the reason I say that is because that might not have been as widespread if the journalist hadn't pushed it up, right? So there's a certain amount of irresponsibility behind just, like, not thinking, writing this kind of article through. And that's something that I wish that journalists would keep in mind when you're dealing with something as intense as this, right? If you're not taking a moment to pause and really re-examine, right? Like shit, the reason I get blown out for whatever is because, I don't have, like, professional credentials, or I don't do all the vetting, or like I have bias. Yeah, like, you know what? So do all of them. And I'm not above them. But the difference between me and them is I accept full blown that this is how it is. Okay? If you seriously want to entertain a concept of journalistic integrity sans philosophy, then I don't know how you get through your day and make decisions. Like that, I just don't. I don't know. I don't understand how that's possible, especially when like those codes of ethics are really like beat into journalists. So whatever, right? Like, I don't want to dwell on this too much. Again, this woman, Carol Robideau, who wrote this article, she's written over 6,000 articles. I am certain that the vast majority of them are not messed up like this. Okay, and she even cops to the fact that sometimes it's just like she's just not on top of herself. And you know what? Like, there is a certain amount of like, yeah, give journalists a little bit of room because they're human, but it is also like pretty well their responsibility to not, like, I have been denied opportunities over for not having like a, you know, a critical enough eye on myself. And it's like, I don't know where the bar is then, right? Like, I don't actually understand what the bar of like, well, I'm authoritative, but you're not, right? And somewhere in this, she actually says to me that like, she says something to me along the lines of like, you know, without me, you wouldn't even know what to be mad about. And it's like, you know, if that's not the highest form of condescension, like, I'm the keeper of all the information and you're just the plebe that doesn't understand, so you should just shut up and read what I have to say. Like, no, man. No, not a good look. Not a good look. And some, you know, an organization that I heralded earlier in this stream, and I still maintain that they're a great organization, but Granite State News Collaborative just retweeted her like it was nothing. And I really don't understand that. And I like, look, if Carol or somebody from Granite State News Collaborative wants to come on and have this conversation with me, I'm happy to do it. And I'll let them know that we're doing this segment today. Because like, I just want to talk about it. I'm not trying to vilify anybody, but like, if we can't have an honest critique of exactly how we engage in journalistic integrity, then I really genuinely do not know what we're doing here. I just don't. So, sorry. Sorry for that salt. I definitely got a little bit heated about it, but it's a little concerning sometimes, though. That's just my take on it. And I will have a link up to that, and I will also have a link up to like the, you know, initial tweet. So anybody who wants to go through, if you completely disagree with me, you think I'm a total asshole, you want to completely deplatform me and cancel me over this take, which I'm sure plenty of people would be happy to do. You can totally just go hit up my Twitter and just bury me to death, and that'll be great. Cool. So now that we're moving on from that, jeez, what a day, man. All right, change pace. Let's just switch it up because this is just getting out of hand. Okay, so this is my fun time right here. This is the fun part for me. So I am sure that plenty of folks just like, I'm sure that plenty of folks don't necessarily know about this, and that's fine. But there's I found out about it when I was trying to keep tabs on Granite Grok a little bit, just follow along with their content, and I noticed that Joel Valenzuela, aka the Desert Lynx on Twitter, who's this like he's a pretty well-known crypto guy, I guess. Cryptocurrency proponent. It's been featured on CNN, I think it was like a while ago, about, you know, he's totally switching to, he doesn't use American currency anymore or something like that. I'm not really sure. This segment isn't about crypto, but Joel and Chris Maidman, who is the chair of the Republican committee here in Peterborough, he's, you know, a member of the AFP. He's like, you know, sort of one of the fresh new faces of conservatism in the Monadnock region. And they've been doing this podcast, this video series podcast thing for a little bit called Live Free and Rant. And they're giving out, you know, some pretty solid libertarian right perspective on stuff, which is honestly like not that different from what I'm doing over here. But last week they started talking about a topic that, like, I was elated that they started discussing it, frankly. Because it's like, what they were talking about is they are talking about how they are not happy with Governor Chris Sununu. Like, really not happy with him. Hilarious. There's like so like it's funny to see like the sort of the how do I want to describe this, like the similarities, honestly. The similarities between what I hear a lot of people on the left saying that they have a problem with when it comes to, you know, when it comes to the party, when it comes to, you know, this sort of the Democratic establishment. A lot of the complaints that I hear out of the left are actually pretty well echoed in this. But it's funny because it's coming from the right? Like, it's coming from the right of the right. Like, and this is also going to sort of get, well, after a certain point, it'll start to get into like tie around. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show this clip right off the bat. We'll just sort of, you know, I'll probably pause it and chuckle about things, but this is totally something to just like, I mean, look, like maybe they'll be happy that I'm doing this because I'm like driving their content or whatever, which is fine. If they want to like make fun of me on their stream, I guess they can do that too. But at any rate, I like most of what they're going to talk about here. Actually, like I'm not really complaining. So let's just I'm going to let this roll here. And we'll discuss this.
The vetoes are, you get what you expect, where you have a Democrat majority in the House, a Democrat majority in the Senate, a Democrat executive council. You expect him to hold the line for your party because he represents your party, and there's a platform, and there's ideals, and there's, you know, principles. What you don't expect is when someone from your party betrays those principles. And in my opinion, that's what's happening now. Mm-hmm. You know, like I said, at first, we all kind of went along with it. Nobody knew anything about the virus. Everybody was, you know, paralyzed by fear. We just kind of, I never changed anything about my life. I still went to work. I still went to the lumberyard. I still went here and there. I mean, I washed my hands a lot more often because that's the number one way to prevent a viral infection. But I was still going to Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's.
Pretty sure. I mean, look, he might not be wrong about like general viral infections, like on the whole, but when you're talking about a respiratory illness, okay, the number one confirmed way that this particular sickness is transmitted is through aerosolized saliva, okay, that is inhaled. That's why masks. So that's kind of just wrong. Like on a broad scale, correct. Within the confines of this particular pandemic, super duper not correct. Let's keep going.
I was still out and about working. I didn't really go to that many restaurants before. So we've talked about this before, right?
Yeah, of course.
So my life didn't change. I wasn't paralyzed by fear. But a lot of people were, and they all kind of went along with it, and it was just kind of what it was, right? And we were like, okay.
I think it's fascinating, this dichotomy that he's setting up of like, you're either paralyzed by fear or you, like, in his context, like, you just ignore the whole thing altogether, rather than like this idea that there might be middle ground where like there's a slew of people that aren't paralyzed by fear, they're just being realists, and they're also not going out to Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know, man. Like, look, if he wants to continue to go to the lumber yard, like, cool, I don't care about that. Like, mad people are going to lumber yards. Like, everybody's building raised beds, whatever. Social distance. Wear your masks. That's all. That's all you got to do. Just keep it rolling.
2 weeks, 4 weeks, we'll muddle through this. But when you get to the point of first of all, you lied to us, right? Because it wasn't about slowing the spread, obviously, or otherwise we would be all free by now. Because we flattened the curve.
Okay, actually, he's not wrong that he lied to us, but like he's like mad about the wrong part of the lie, right? Like, the lie is that this was ever gonna end anytime soon, right? Like, they can be mad at him that he wasn't truthful with them about how serious it was from the jump, but like, Sununu made a dumb move here, in a sense. Like it's like he's doing and they'll get into it, but he's doing like the middle of the road thing, and inevitably he's gonna piss everybody off doing that, which is fine. Like, this is like I can't describe how like this is great news. This is great news that these guys are having this conversation.
The hospitals aren't overrun; they're empty. So we did your original goal, and then you were like, "Nah, I'm going to rip the goalposts out, and I'm going to hide them." And I've been lying to you, and I'm going to keep lying to you, and I'm going to keep gaslighting you, and instead.
I also, sorry, there's like, he's talking about like flattening the curve. Like, that's something that's like, once you've done it, it remains flat, right? Like, flattening the curve and keeping it flat is something that you actively have to do, okay? It's like taking a shower. It's not like you can take one shower and then you don't have to take more showers, right? Like, you got to keep taking showers if you want to be clean, homie. That's just how that works. So it's like, word. And I get that he's upset that Sununu ripped the goalposts out. Maybe y'all should be upset with him making you think that this is not as bad as it is in the first place. Like, I don't know. We'll just keep rolling on it. This is good stuff, guys.
Of me justifying why I'm doing what I'm doing, you have to justify why I should stop. And that is not the principles we expect from a governor. And they all kind of went along with it, and it was just kind of what it was, right? And we were like, okay, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, we'll muddle through this. But when you get to the point of first of all, you lied to us, right? Because it wasn't about slowing the spread, obviously, or otherwise we would be all free by now, because we flattened the curve. The hospitals aren't overrun; they're empty. So we did your original goal, and then you were like, "Nah, I'm going to rip the goalposts out, and I'm going to hide them." And I've been lying to you, and I'm going to keep lying to you, and I'm going to keep gaslighting you. And instead of me justifying why I'm doing what I'm doing, you have to justify why I should stop. And that is not the principles we expect from a governor.
So, okay, what he's talking about right there is, I think it was the New Hampshire Journal had asked a question about like, what was the way it had gone? It was like, it was more or less the extent like, why did you lie to us? Like, why are you changing things now? And Sununu basically, like, in the exchange, which is hilarious, turned it around and was like, well, I mean, like, I think you should look at the science and tell me why I should do different. Like, and which is funny because it's like he's trying, like, in a way he's trying to listen to like the people, and saying like, hey, if you've got science that I don't have that proves me wrong, prove it to me, because I'm going and getting sources from all of these experts and they're telling me this is what I need to do. So like, yeah, if some random journo decides that like they need him to justify it, it's like it's a false frame, right? Like, in order for that journalist to like truly like that question would carry a lot more weight if that journalist were able to provide evidence to back up what like why they're asking that question. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. That's a little mealy for me personally, but I do understand the gripe, and in all likelihood, I'd probably have the same type of problem with, you know, like a centrist Democrat being from the left myself if I were to make, you know, find myself in a similar situation. So we'll just let it roll.
That wears our team badge, right?
So,
he's wearing the red hat.
So now we get to that old game of chicken. The civil disobedience game of chicken also applies to the vote the bums out game of chicken, except instead of threatening to arrest you or fine you or whatever else if you disobey, now it's threatening to subject you to a worse dictator. And at some point, it's just like, well, what'll happen? We get
okay, like. So one, it's hilarious because these guys are now discussing like the gripe and the pain that like I know a lot of young leftists feel trying to deal with like the whole Biden thing right now. So it's like, and just in general, like when I think about like leftists who are dealing with neoliberals and what's been going on for literally the past like 2 decades, like they're describing a situation. They're like, oh, this is we got to talk about this. Like, hey, we on the left have been dealing with this for the past 2 decades. So like, welcome to the party, boys. Like, yeah, it's just, it's a little,
fine you
it's a
or
little
whatever
ridiculous.
else if you disobey. Now it's threatening to subject you to a worse dictator.
Now, also, I don't understand why he's saying dictator. Like, this is like that type, like I just like, my personal question on that is like, like to Joel there would be like, why dig into that level of hyperbole? Like, we're certainly not like a truly functioning democracy at this point. We're like a downgraded democracy here in the United States, and that's definitely clear, like on a state to state level too. But we just do not live in a dictatorship. Governors are not dictators, like at all. Like that's purely not true. So like, and my question to Joel there would be like, are you hyperbolizing that to further activate people who might be already upset with that type of rhetoric? To like, I mean, I would assume the answer is yes, but like, but it's like it's clearly a conscious exaggeration, and like I just like, I guess I myself really want to understand like how deeply is it like, where is the line on when we become a dictatorship, dude? Like, if you really believe that our governors are dictators, right? Do you believe that Sununu is a dictator? Would you characterize Chris Sununu as a dictator currently? I wouldn't. I just would not. He's not a dictator. He's a governor. He doesn't dictate. At least not across everything. His emergency orders are certain dictations of policy. But that's not the same as dictatorship. And also a lot of those orders are like, you know, They're very like middle of the road. Like they're very non-committal. So it's like that. Yeah, it's a little wonky.
And at some point, it's just like, well, what'll happen? Will you get the worst dictator, or are you gonna vote for me? And at some point, someone's got to break. And so just with civil disobedience, we're okay. Well, fine, I'll open up my business. I don't care if I get arrested. And then all of a sudden, they're like, okay, we got to acquiesce. This is does voting work? Kind of. But this is the way to make voting work if you're going to make it work. And if you're not going to make it work, stay home. Sorry. Like, don't mess with this. It's a boring, terrible process. So
please,
the way you make it work is
stay home.
You don't play those games.
Sounds good.
Because the lesser of two evils is still evil. The lesser of two evils means you're always losing at the negotiating table. It's all negotiation. It's all, what do I get?
That's actually not.
What do I get from these rulers?
Disagree with that at all.
And the answer is always get screwed, but there's always like various degrees of getting screwed. And the way to negotiate down your getting screwed is not by always voting for the lesser of two evils. The game of chicken here is vote for Sununu. He's done a lot of good things. But come on, you're shutting down, crashing the whole economy, which I would argue is more devastating than any of the good he did in his entire term combined. Is way worse.
Yes,
in terms
I agree.
Of way more destructive. Way like you say, oh,
okay, that's like. I would like every leftist that hears this friggin' video that I'm making to make some note of that. Like, please take a minute and make note. Because, like, you know, they talk about how in the primary, and Chris is sitting there wearing an Edelblut shirt, they talk about how in the primary, the gap between Sununu and Edelblut was like 1,068 votes or something like that. Like, it's a very, very, very small margin of error. And these guys are kind of speaking to the Edelblut crowd, right? Like, they're very much so speaking to the Edelblut crowd. And if they actually were to, you know, like, okay, analogous would be Democrats concerned that Bernie Sanders supporters won't vote for Joe Biden because they think he's a gross sexual abuser. And they're concerned that, like, there's genuine concern and genuine speculation over whether or not the progressive Sanders wing of the party would sink the nomination for Joe Biden against Trump. Now, I would like everybody to consider this same paradigm within the state of New Hampshire, okay? Except, like, it's different. It's genuinely different because unlike Donald Trump, right? Chris Sununu doesn't, he's more like George W. Bush, as these guys point out, okay? He's like the combo between Jeb and George. He's not the staunch libertarian. He's not the populist candidate. So this is a place in which Sununu is really, really weak, okay? And we can look at, like, his approval ratings, right? This is how I see this going, right? You could look at Sununu's approval ratings, okay? You could see him be sky high, right? Over how he's handling the COVID crisis. But those people that approve of that are not going to vote for him necessarily. Think about the approval rating of Sununu's performance during the COVID crisis among Democrats. People that, like, just probably won't vote for the dude. Like, there's some strategy to be had here. Okay? And in a minute, they're going to get into it further. And I'm just going to let it roll on that.
Oh, you cut business taxes, all these other things. The economy goes up. Yay, Sununu. Okay, good. But he just ruined that and then some. So the idea is if you don't vote for him, one of these awful people will get in. It's like, well, first off, we might have to have a term under a terrible governor. We have to be ready to go to jail, right? You have
okay,
to be,
well, yeah, you have to be ready. If you're going to do civil disobedience, you have to be ready to deal with the consequences.
Same thing.
So
if you vote,
y'all should talk to some of the people at 350 NH, okay? Because like they just do that work. Like I like how y'all have to acclimate your folks to get used to this concept, or like, you know, like it's this big thing. Like, yo, for the left, this is just daily practice, okay? Going out, getting arrested, putting yourself on, like, we're used to getting stomped by cops, okay? Like, I just look at the difference between, say, a Bow coal plant protest and the reopening protest that occurred at the State House, and that's all I need to say about that.
Open.
If you vote for the if you don't subscribe to the lesser of two evils voting pattern, if you vote for some random other person, you have to take the risk that Sununu's going to lose and someone worse gets in place, and you have to deal with them for a little while. That is a risk that you will take. But guess what? Just like going to jail for doing haircuts, there's light at the other end of that.
And that right there is exactly how the left can utilize separations within the right going on right now, at least on a state level. Okay, that's just that, right? Like, it's not a, you know, if you don't like you gotta understand your opposition, man. You gotta understand the math. You gotta be able to plan about it. So this is interesting stuff, man. And you know, like, I don't agree with their reasons for not supporting Sununu during this. But I don't support him either. And if these guys are willing to deal with a Democrat governor for a little while, like, these guys are the hardliners. I don't see why that isn't great news for the left. So, yeah. Really. I don't see how that wouldn't be a huge boon for somebody like Andrew Volinsky. So I'm gonna put up the next one, and we'll just keep rolling.
Like,
on
if
this.
you're not gonna do what the people want or what the people expect you to do, right? Like, I'll tell you, it's a lot more fun being mad at a Democrat governor.
Okay, so I totally should have set this up a little better. Like, this clip in particular that I just popped up is more about Chris talking about sort of like his own personal like opinions on it, and this is solid. This is really solid. Like, and what I think is funny about this, right? Like, I'll let it roll for a second, then I'll finish my.
Because you, it's easy to be mad at them, right? Like Governor Whitmer in Michigan. It's real fun to be mad at her because you expect Democrats to be your government. You expect them to. So it's kind of.
I love that. You expect Democrats to be your government. Like, you know, I at one point I had heard someone describe, like, I can't remember where. I'll see if I can pull it up. It might be a YouTube video, but like, it's like this description of like how the Republican Party is the party of losers. And the reason it's the party of losers is because of that exact mindset, right? It's easier to be in the position of less power and just be mad at a Democrat. Cool, man. If that's what you want, then just vote in Democrats so you can just be mad and hate all the time. Word. Works for us. Awesome. Continue.
So, like, you get what you expect. And when you get something that you don't expect, like what I expected in New Hampshire was kind of like Kristi Noem out in South Dakota. I expected live free or die mentality. I expected personal responsibility. I expected, you know, I mean, we're the live free or die state. So I expected kind of we would get something along those lines. Kristi Noem happened to be like the only governor in the country to do it. And, you know, she got parades thrown in her favor. Like the people that are protesting in every other state are throwing parades for her.
Do you think she's going to get reelected?
Oh, by a landslide.
Exactly. Take heed, politicians.
Right.
This is how it's done.
So you know, like you said, it comes down like so it seems counterintuitive to vote against your own party, right? I mean, if you subscribe to the party system, I don't. I do. I work within the party to try to hopefully move it in the right direction. Because somebody has.
I really just want to take a second to point out, like, this is actually where I totally, like, I could not agree with Chris more. Like, actually, I mean, I think he's spot on about this. If you want to drag, like, for him, it's about taking his conservative Republican Party further to the right. You know, for me, it's about taking this like center liberal Democratic Party and pulling it further to the left. Like, our interests are not all that different. They just happen to go in opposite directions. And I like the idea of for populists, I like the idea of trying to reconsider and reframe this the division between, say, the left and the right in terms of a populist or a more libertarian way, because I certainly agree that there's this concept of left libertarianism, right? Like, you can be on the left and still have libertarian values. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive. And the you know, those charts on the internet would put authoritarianism on the other side, which I think is like an apt comparison. And like, but it's, you know, I think what I like, look, I feel like my own personal orientations to this are not all that different from Chris's, in the sense that, like, when it comes to like where I would feel about like or where we might sit on like the authoritarian to libertarian scale, right? Like, I just can't get all the way into that. Like, you know, like, look, there's a lot of value in anarchy and that type of concept, and there's a lot of things to be learned from it, but like, there's shades of gray. And I think what's at least decent about what Chris is saying is that he recognizes in his own party that that's a shade of gray that he's got to deal with, right? And I think folks on the left, folks that are going to deal with this long term, can learn from this, right? Like, this is not just a dialogue that we have internally on our own side, but it's something we need to also observe and consider in the right. So yeah, let's roll on that.
Has to. So I think working within the Republican Party is one of the easiest and fastest routes to get to liberty, to get to smaller government. The Republican Party was founded on the ideals of personal responsibility and smaller government. Mm-hmm. So to get back to that, you know, I working within the party is fine. But if we have to suffer a term, 2 years of a Democrat governor, it might just be what we have to do. And, you know, that's not to say I want all Republicans to lose. I want
now. I would hope that Democrats will take note of this. Because at some point or another, there will be a populist shift in the state. And right now, it could go to the left or it could go to the right. And I got to be honest with you, the GOP in this state is doing a much better job working with their populists than the NHDP is with theirs. Yeah. at this point, I think like I super duper hope that leadership at the NHDP is watching this podcast, this YouTube show. I really hope so. I cannot stress it enough. So, and something else to be clear about, like, these guys have a significantly larger following than I do, right? I'm a nobody by comparison. So, like, yeah, Joel and Chris, if you want to make fun of me, yes, y'all have a bigger following than me. I don't care. I'm talking about it. It's fine. So, look, like, there's commonalities on this, but like far be it for me to be opposed to him like accepting that they might have to deal with an awful leader for a while, right? I'm willing to take that risk. Like I'll you know, I'll take that gamble. I'd love to see how that plays out in, you know, 3 to 4 years, like 3 to 5 years. If they're able to, if the Free State Project really is able to totally yank the conservatives all the way into basically just no longer even being like center Republicans and literally just turning the Republican Party into the Libertarian Party in this state. I mean, that's like been more or less the goal of the Free State Project. But like, frankly, I'm willing to take that bet. And the reason I'm willing to take that bet is because like we've consistently had Democrats going to DC. Like we pretty consistently send Democrats to DC, with the exception of Kelly Ayotte in recent memory. You know, we really do, like, this state has just generally trended blue over the past few decades. That's just something that you can observe politically. So like, I am fine with them trying to take that bet. I'm totally cool with it, and I totally support it. And like, I just want to see how it cashes out.
The one, and I don't even necessarily want
that asshole
to lose.
You know,
I don't necessarily want him to lose. I don't want Governor Feltus. I don't want Governor Walensky. But I am no longer going to just vote for the lesser of two evils. Mm-hmm. If you want my vote, I want you to earn it. So I will vote for the senator in my district, probably. She seems pretty aligned with me on principle. And until she proves me wrong, she's earned my vote. I will vote for...
Can we just note, talked about earlier in this stream, that's Jean Deach. She's a Democrat, okay? Like... And I have seen him openly criticize her multiple times on Facebook. Like, and he's on his right-wing stream right now talking about how he'll vote for her. Cool.
State reps in my district, which I'm one of the candidates, so I mean, it's easy to vote for myself.
Okay, announcement. Chris Maidman's running for state rep in this area. Okay, so Peter Leishman, Ivy Van, keep an eye on it. Hold on, I gotta back this up because this is a great moment. I just want to let the whole thing ring out.
She proves me wrong. She's earned my vote. I will vote for state reps in my district, which I'm one of the candidates. So I mean, it's easy to vote for myself, but I betray myself all the time. So who really knows, right?
Great. If he's gonna, if he gets elected and starts betraying himself, okay, that's cool. I mean, like, it seems like he's making a lot of concessions that are certain betrayals to his own beliefs throughout this stream in the interest of like a long-term achievement. And like, I'm happy with that. And I think the main reason I'm happy with that is that history seems to be bearing out that like, that's not necessarily like a long-term, like something that will fully come back. I mean, like, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I could be. Donald Trump getting elected to president was certainly a kick in that direction, of reminding us that we're not anywhere near as far along as we think we are. But I mean, I think definitely in some ways we have, as a society, grown better about being more accepting and being a more, a more communal society. In what capacities we can be, in what capacities work, where we've had a lot of years working on that. And so, look to the past versus walk to the future. I don't think the future is the past. If they want to see the future as a way to return to it, cool, but I'll let them, I'm happy to let them try and walk that road, because strategically speaking, I can see how it would be a huge benefit to the left. Now, that's not to say that I would cast a vote for the guy, but it's interesting stuff to think about.
Depends on what you're going to get.
So basically, until you give me a reason not to vote for you, is, what do they say? What did Reagan used to say? Trust but verify. So I trust that these people that run on these platforms will adhere to that. And once you violate that trust, you're going to have to re-earn it. Mark Warden, Governor Hoel, Governor Hines.
Sure.
So I mean, a primary would be very interesting, right?
Governor Hines, yikes.
We saw how close it was in 2016, and we have a governor now that's not, upholding to the live free or die principles. So I think a primary would be very interesting.
Yeah, let me chime in on that.
It's going to be a lot of money, a lot of time. We're kind of late, so go ahead.
If it's Hoel or Hines or whoever you are, potential primary opponent to poor Chris Sununu and his weird Frankenstein head. If you're going to be a primary opponent to this guy, start finding all the businesses now that are defying the orders and start trying to support them. If anyone got fined, help raise money to cover that. Start going to them, start patronizing them. That's your groundwork. That's your seat. And people remember, I remember that guy who was, breaking the law, like, just to support my business, to support the end of this kind of stuff. This is my guy. He's not just say, hey, I know people are pissed off at Sununu. I'm going to go run against him because I want political power. It's like, even if, whether or not that's the case, you got to get in there now. You got to make sure you show that you care, even if you just care about getting elected. But the only way you can do that is by actually supporting people before you're even running. Go start doing that. Get that.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, right? That's super, super great. That last bit that Joel was going over there, because he just gave it to us, and I'm sitting here, they can watch my videos and they can pull strategy off of me too, and that's fine. We can have this back and forth and that's cool. But he just described exactly what somebody like Andrew Valinsky would need to consume and repatriate. Maybe I'm using that word wrong, but turn it into something that can be used in a find a progressive policy that sort of is equal, right? Or would satisfy the same needs. So if you're able to give if you, and I don't necessarily know the exact policy here, but to shore up small business loans, to not there's weird conditionality going on in a lot of stuff right now about well, if you fired all your employees, then you're not eligible to get small business association benefits, or like, or what is not SBA, but the PPP relief, right? I think that's how that works. That you're not allowed to get the relief if you've laid off your workers because you needed to keep your workers on the payroll in order to pay them off. So it's like, and it's like this catch-22 of like there was too much time that elapsed, and like no restaurant owner has enough money to pay all their employees all that time at their full salaries and keep their building and all this stuff. So like you're setting up an impossible dichotomy, and a lot of those owners are going to say, dude, I just want to get back open. I just want to get back to work. They might not be saying that if they're actually like assured that their business is just like, okay, we're going to take you, we're going to cast you in amber right now, and we're going to wait until this stuff is over. We're not going to let your business fall apart. And you know, like to that extent, it's like, look, I saw that Dave Zay, owner of Harlow's, who's been on the channel before, he made a post about how like there's, you know, like restaurants are hiring lobbyists now. You know, like there's this whole new wing of lobbying going on in Congress by rock club owners and restaurants, because the entire industry is decimated. And like whenever we as a society either get out of this pandemic situation or find adequate ways to accept this into our new norm and find ways to like continue on with society while dealing with the fact that like, okay, existing is more dangerous now. Like I think that's a reality people don't like grapple with enough, is like, what if this is permanent? What do we do then? What are the steps that you take? Like you got to have contingencies like that. And I think like the biggest gripe, I would say, like the part of the problem here is that like ain't nobody have contingencies for if we couldn't reopen in 2 months. When this first came out in March, like, right? Like that's how everybody was talking about it. And it's like, that was the shot in the foot, because there was like only a handful of outlets or sources were saying at the time, this could go on indefinitely. Just don't have that you know, we just never had that. And so that's, you know, I would say that's a huge part of the reason that we're in what we're in now. Because there just wasn't an acceptance of reality. So yeah. That's all I'm going to go off on today. I'm not going to do this anymore. This episode actually went almost 20 minutes longer than I normally would. But yeah, I'm happy to cover this content. I think a lot of that is super, super important. I really wanted to do this set of stuff today because this stuff is really key. This is really crucial for folks. So, thank you and everybody for tuning in that has tuned in. I noticed that we did have some regular watchers today, so that's great news. And again, this episode is going to get clipped out, and we'll just be doing episode clip outs from here on. That way people can catch shorter segments, that you don't have to sit through this big massive stream if you don't want to, which is fun and cool. And I'm glad that I'm finally able to get my act together to make that happen. Let's see here. Also, something I'm going to try and do for everybody is, for those of you that do not know, I am a musician. I make electronic music. Most of the tunes that you hear on this show, I produce myself. It's kind of nice because I don't have to sweat royalties. But obviously, we have had, I've featured some other musicians, friends of mine, local community members. But something I wanted to try and do is just like, hey, go out and just sort of document some of the trails in the area. I'll do a little trail video, try and do them once a week. I've got one queued up now. I'm just sort of trying to get the music together. But yeah, we'll be trying to put out basically like a little 2-3 minute nature video and some fresh music every week. So that's something new that will be popping up on the channel in the next day or so, as I just sort of like kind of get back in the saddle here. But yeah, that was content that I really wanted to get out to folks. And then obviously people may have noticed that this is a little bit more like unabashedly political today. But I mean, I am also, I want to talk about strategy, and I think, something else that I was not able to, because it canceled last week's episode, wasn't able to have Josie Pinto on, but she's going to be on next week. And we're going to be talking about New Hampshire youth movement and what's going on over there, the way they look at strategy. That's a theme that I'm going to try and continue to have going on here on the show. Is just more political strategy. I think that's good stuff, like in-state stuff. There's plenty of sources on national, so I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, so cool. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. Again, please. There it is, right there. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, support us on Patreon, subscribe down there, hit the little bell for notifications so that every time we do a video, we post something new, we go live, you'll get a little pop-up right on your phone or wherever telling you that it's happening. So yes, definitely become a supporter. This is hopefully expand it, but honestly, I just, I offer these videos up for free. There's really very little to anything that's locked up behind a paywall for any period of time. And the reason I do that is like, hey, I have spent so much time in my life where I didn't have money and I wasn't able to support the things that I cared about. I'd use it every day. I'd listen to it. I'd consume it. It would shape my opinion, but I might not have been able to afford it at the time. And I was lucky enough that the people that supplied that content did so for free. And I think it's worth paying it forward to folks. So like, if, that's all right. The work is more important than the discussion about strategy, the discussion about what's happening. That's all way, 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 way more important than money. So while obviously any support that anybody's willing to give to the channel really makes a huge difference, this show is going to exist with or without that. And that's just a promise I'll make to folks. Unless for some reason I just can't stomach this anymore, or I just run out of energy. But trust me, y'all will know when that happens. And I just don't know. I don't see it in the cards yet. So at any rate, that's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Back next week, and definitely we'll have a good new set of stuff to look at. Josie will be on. We'll be talking about New Hampshire youth movement, and yeah, just plenty more to come. So folks, thanks so much, and stay tuned, and we'll catch you next week. Peace out.